We are now opening the Maritime Supply Chain chapter. I call to the stage Dr. George Vaggelas. He is an associate professor at the Department of Ports, Management and Shipping of the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens. His speech is entitled The Impact of Pandemic and Geopolitical Turmoils on Ports. Please, Mr. Vaggelas.
All right. Good morning. My name is George Vaggelas. I am an associate professor at the Department of Port Management and Shipping and the Department of the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens. Now, I'm going to give you an overview of what is going on in the port industry the last 4 years. I'm sure that you are well aware of what is going on in the shipping industry the last 4 years. We have several events, and of course, we are living in very turbulent times. All right, a few things. Let's go back in 2020. What we saw, we had the COVID-19 pandemic. On March 2020, the International Health Organization declared COVID-19 as a pandemic. What was the impact in our daily life? We saw the lockdowns. And of course, as regards shipping, we had a huge decrease in trade volumes. And this, of course, caused a huge impact to the ports. We have closure of ports, and of course, ports experienced very low volumes of traffic and of vessel calls. And of course, we have several crew issues. For those of you working in the shipping industry, I'm pretty sure that you know that we had a lot of problems in crew exchanges in several ports around the world. And 1.5 years after the declare of COVID-19 as a pandemic, we went in the post-COVID-19 period. And what we experienced, a huge inflation in the global economy. And of course, all the countries, all the global economy tried to restock all the cargo needs and of course, all their demand needs. And before recovering from the inflation pressure, we had on February 2022, the invasion of Russia to Ukraine. What was the result? Energy supply shortages, and I'm pretty sure that we all experienced that 2 years ago. And of course, European Union sanctions, or shall I say the sanctions of the West towards Russia, which caused a ton miles increase in the shipping industry because we have to change our supply areas in order to try to cover, let's say, the loss of cargoes from Russia. And of course, all this resulted in an increase in the demand for shipping services. And finally, a few months ago, we had the incidents in Israel on October 2023. And what we are experiencing right now, the crisis in the Red Sea, is the aftermath of these events. What's going on? We have attacks on cargo vessels in the Red Sea area from Houthis in Yemen. And of course, several shipping companies are avoiding Suez Canal. Right now, all the major liner shipping companies, MSC, CMA, SSM, COSCO, are skipping Suez, and they are selecting to go around the Cape of Hope. Of course, we have alternative trade routes, as I'm saying here, increasing ton miles, and of course, we are going to see on what is the impact of these changes in the ports, and especially in the Mediterranean region, and also with an eye on what's going on in the port of Piraeus. And this is the impact of the COVID-19 in shipping. I have to say that the first few weeks after the pandemic, the tanker market were among the most, let's say, happy shipping markets in the world. They saw a huge increase in the freight rates, although the scenery was not the same in the dry bulk market. You can see here the differences between what went on in the shipping, in the tanker market and in the dry bulk market. And what about ports? I have to say that the first year of the pandemic, in 2020, comparing with 2019, ports lost around 30% of their weekly calls. I mean, every week we had around 53,000 calls of vessels in ports worldwide. And after the pandemic, this number has been reduced to almost 39,000. So we lost around 30% of the calls. And of course, no need to say that ports lost a lot of revenues. I have also to note that the biggest losses came from the cruise vessels, ro-ro vessels, and dry bulk vessels. Based on data provided by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Agreement, the less impacted shipping sectors were the containers and the tankers. And what about container ports? This graph shows us what went on with the impact of the COVID-19 in the biggest container ports around the world. I have to say that we have a two-tier port system right now, or at least during the pandemic period. We have the ports in the West, especially in Europe, which experienced a huge decrease in the container traffic. And we had also the ports in Asia, with a focus on the Chinese ports, which experienced a very huge increase in their traffic. There is no need to remind you that during the pandemic period, everybody went online to order some things, goods and consumable goods, and the majority of them are coming from China, of course. Many of the Gulf top ports lost traffic, especially those located in the Malacca Strait, such like Singapore, Changsung, and Port Kelang. And the ports in the Middle East and North America, I have to say that were among the least impacted ports in the world. And of course, the changes in the port industry was not only on throughput. We had several other changes. I tried to list some of them in this slide. We had extra restrictions on vessel calls. I mean, during that time, you had to deliver a lot of paper to the port in order to allow to enter a port. Extra delays due to changes in port call procedures. We have hinterland problems. When we were talking about the transport of goods from the hinterland to the port and vice versa, we saw that at that period of time, several choke points arose, which resulted in a congestion in the supply chains. Capacity utilization, including warehousing and distributing activities in ports, were down. And also we saw a change in the procedures followed by the port in order to facilitate cargo, passengers, and vessels. And of course, no need to say that we had also a huge impact on the workforce. I mean, we also experienced that. We went online. We changed the hygiene and the safety measures in ports and all this stuff. And in general, how ports reacted, because the conference is about resilience, ports went towards resilience. I mean, they tried. It was something new for them, for the port industry. So they tried to catch up with the developments in the other industries. What they did, they developed crisis protocols and communication strategies in order to tackle future, of course, crises or pandemics or whatsoever. They tried to re-educate and to retrain their staff and to safeguard, let's say, a minimum well-being for the port labor personnel. And also, they invested heavily in technology preparedness. I mean, to be ready for the next crisis, to went online, or to do what is needed in order to keep operating. And of course, the biggest, let's say, issue is to safeguard the continuity of cargo flows, because we saw during the pandemic that we had a lot of shortages and a lot of, interruptions in the supply chains and in the cargo flows. All right, and here are also some, as you can see here, the impact of COVID-19 in several European Union ports. Piraeus lost some traffic, although the impact was limited. It was 4 to 5%. Believe me, right now the situation is worse compared with the COVID-19 pandemic. And ports applied a series of measures trying to ease the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, such as fast-track lanes, longer shifts, rotation systems, and so on. And let's go today, what's going on. No need to say more. This is the situation right now. Many vessels are skipping Suez, and these are some headlines from news. ZIM, COSCO, MSC, CMA, is making the circle. I mean, they are going around Africa. And what this means, of course, a few data. Around 10 to 12% of the global trade is passing through the Suez Canal. This trade is estimated to have a value of $1 trillion. So this is just to understand the impact of the crisis, of the Red Sea crisis, on the shipping industry, on the global trade, and of course on the global economy. The detour around Cape adds around 3,500 to 4,000 nautical miles in sea travel distance, which is equal to an additional 12 to 15 days of sea travel. The additional cost for the shipping companies, the additional fuel cost is around $250,000 to $300,000. Of course, depends on the vessel. What else are the impacts, which are some other additional impacts? So the skyrocketing of insurance premiums. They went from 0.05 to 1% right now, as is. This is the situation. And of course, we are experiencing a huge increase in the freight rates, especially in the container shipping. Between China and the US East Coast, this is the trade line, we have an increase of 174% since October. And the situation is even worse when we are talking about the China-North Europe trade. As you can see here, we have an increase of almost 500%. Right now, if you want to ship an FAU, a 40-foot equivalent unit, between China and North Europe, you have to pay $5,500, which is almost 5 times more compared with the usual freight rate before the Red Sea crisis. And let's talk about the Mediterranean, because the Mediterranean ports are facing, I have to say, the most severe impact of this crisis. And why is that? Because by skipping Suez Canal, the first major transshipment ports that you are going to call is Algeciras in Spain, Tangier Med in Morocco, and also the North European ports. Okay. Right now, at least in the Med, we have a decrease of around 55% in the calls of container vessels with a capacity of more than 1,000 TEUs, which means that the mother ships are avoiding the Med. Okay, so all these big vessels are calling directly in the North European ports. Piraeus was down 13% on January only, and we are expecting to have a deeper decrease on February. Hub ports in the Med are losing their importance in the global trade system and transport system, of course. And who are the winners? The West African and the North European ports. Right now, Piraeus is facilitating mostly feeder vessels. All the major liners, all the main liners from China is not calling at Piraeus. They are skipping Piraeus, they are skipping the Med, not only Piraeus, but also Barcelona, Genoa, Massaslock in Malta, and all these ports. And of course, some lessons for the future, because as I said before, we are talking about resilience. What ports should do? They have to provide, to develop a framework towards resilience. They have to be able to develop their anticipation capabilities, to observe, identify crises, and to prepare in order to face this crisis. They have to develop their COP capabilities by accepting, developing, and implementing a plan in order to deal with any crisis. And of course, always, as we keep saying in resilience, when we are talking about resilience, you have to be adaptive. Okay, and this is also valid for the port industry. All right, okay, 2 minutes before the end. I think that I gained also some time to the organizers. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.